The unexpected challenge. The sun was setting over the distant horizon of the alien world, casting long shadows across the rugged terrain. An intergalactic academy, a place known for pushing the limits of every species in the galaxy, stood silently in the distance. It was here that the most dangerous survival challenge would take place, and the most unlikely group of cadets was about to face it: the Deathworlders, humans. The Academy had seen countless species try and fail to survive in its most unforgiving environments. The challenge was designed to break even the toughest of warriors, testing their limits in extreme weather, hostile creatures, and deadly terrain. Over the centuries, the alien races that attended this academy had seen their best and brightest fail under the strain of the environment. They knew their weaknesses well. Yet the humans were different. The aliens had heard stories about them, but they thought they understood them. Weak, chaotic creatures who barely survived on their own planet. How could they possibly succeed in a challenge so grueling? As the human cadets arrived, they were met with looks of curiosity, amusement, and disbelief. The aliens, dressed in their advanced uniforms, stood tall and confident, observing the humans with quiet judgment. They whispered among themselves, making assumptions about the Deathworlders' capabilities. It wasn't just the humans' reputation as fierce, unpredictable survivors that intrigued them. It was the way the humans carried themselves, resilient but with an air of humility that made others question what they had underestimated. The humans, led by their commanding officer, Captain Aiden Drake, stepped into the large central hall of the academy. It was filled with the other cadets, each of them from a different species, from towering giants of rock to swift, insectoid warriors with sharp, glowing eyes. They were all here for the same reason: to prove their worth in the most dangerous and grueling survival trials ever designed. No one had ever completed it, and that's how the Academy liked it. Except for one thing. The humans, seemingly small and unassuming, had a reputation for surviving things no one else could even dream of facing. They had conquered their own death world, their home planet Earth, and had become legends across the galaxy for their ability to adapt and overcome. Welcome, the head instructor, a tall, cold-looking alien with long antennae, said as he surveyed the room. His voice echoed through the hall. You are about to face the greatest challenge of your lives. No one has ever completed this simulation in the history of this academy. You will be tested in ways that will push your bodies, minds, and spirits to their limits. But beware, the environment is unforgiving. The creatures here are merciless, and the terrain will change at a moment's notice. Do not underestimate this challenge, or it will be your end. He paused, his eyes scanning the cadets. His gaze finally rested on the humans, their faces focused but calm. You may think your planet's survival stories are enough to prepare you, but they are nothing compared to what you will face here. Prepare for the worst. Captain Aiden Drake stood tall, his calm demeanor betraying none of the pressure of what lay ahead. He had trained for moments like this his whole life, and while the aliens may see them as weak, he knew something they didn't. Humans had an uncanny ability to adapt and survive, even in the most impossible conditions. His team of cadets, all seasoned veterans of various battlefields and survival situations, was ready. They had been through the worst their own planet could throw at them, and they had survived it all. The countdown to the challenge began, the lights dimming as the massive doors to the arena opened. The Deathworlders walked forward, determined but unsure of what awaited them. The other cadets followed, with their strange alien tech glinting in the dim light, their eyes filled with both doubt and confidence. As the doors shut behind them, they were plunged into darkness for a moment before artificial lights flickered on, revealing their surroundings. The first environment was set: a dense, alien jungle. Tall trees with glowing fruit towered above them, their roots twisting and turning into the ground like snakes. It was beautiful, but deadly. The air was thick with the scent of alien flowers, and strange noises echoed from all directions. The trees seemed to move, as if alive, and the ground beneath their feet was uneven and treacherous. To the inexperienced, it was paradise. To the survivors, it was a trap. The other cadets hesitated for a moment, unsure of where to go. The humans, on the other hand, took immediate action. They scanned their surroundings, looking for signs of danger. Captain Drake signaled for his team to form a circle, each cadet keeping a sharp eye out for any threats. The aliens watched, intrigued by their calm and confident movements. It was almost as if the humans had been here before. But what they didn't know was that humans had a unique advantage. They had evolved on a death world, Earth. The planet was a harsh place, filled with predators and dangers that would have wiped out any other species. But humanity had survived, learned to adapt, and become stronger because of it. In a way, Earth had trained them for this very moment. As the humans continued to move forward, the alien cadets began to realize something that would come to haunt them in the coming days. These humans weren't afraid. They weren't panicked. They weren't thinking about the dangers. They were simply doing what they had always done, surviving. The first alien cadet to make a misstep triggered a trap, a massive vine that shot up from the ground, wrapping around his leg and pulling him off the ground. He screamed as the vine tightened, but his fellow cadets did nothing to help. They froze, unsure of what to do, paralyzed by fear. But the humans, without hesitation, rushed forward. One of them, Private Sarah Hayes, pulled out a sharp blade and cut through the vine with expert precision. Within seconds, the cadet was freed, his breathing heavy but grateful. The alien cadets looked on in disbelief. They had underestimated the humans, and they were about to learn the hard way that underestimating a Deathworlder was the last mistake they would ever make. The test begins. The air crackled with tension as the surviving cadets moved deeper into the alien jungle. The eerie sound of buzzing creatures filled the air, and the once beautiful scenery now felt more like a labyrinth of danger. What had initially seemed like a lush, vibrant environment was now an obstacle course where the rules of survival were unknown to the cadets. For most of the alien species, it was overwhelming. This strange, hostile jungle was unlike anything they had ever encountered before. Captain Aidan Drake led his team forward, his eyes scanning the surroundings with cold focus. He knew that they had no time to waste. Each step had to be calculated. Every decision had to be made with precision, because the stakes were high, and the jungle wasn't the only danger they would face. The alien cadets, though visibly shaken, kept up, but their confidence was beginning to crack. "Stay alert," Aidan's voice echoed quietly over the comms. "This place isn't just alive, it's hunting us." The team moved forward, sticking close together as the thick, tangled foliage made it difficult to see beyond a few meters. Even though the air was dense with moisture, it was unnaturally still. Nothing was natural here. Private Sarah Hayes, the one who had saved the alien cadet moments ago, watched intently for signs of movement. She was no stranger to strange environments, but the jungle here felt different. It was like the very trees were watching them. Behind them, the other cadets, most of them from alien species that had never seen such a hostile environment, struggled to keep pace. Their movements were jerky, hesitant, unsure. They had been taught how to fight in controlled battles, how to engage in space combat, but nothing had prepared them for this. There were no rules here, no protocols, just survival. And that's when it happened. Without warning, a sharp shriek tore through the air. One of the alien cadets, a tall, armored species with 4 arms, was grabbed by a massive creature that emerged from the shadows. Its jaws were dripping with venom, and its eyes glowed with a predatory hunger. The creature was unlike anything the alien cadets had seen before. Its skin shimmered like molten rock, and it moved with terrifying speed, its claws lashing out. The alien cadet struggled, but the creature was too strong. He screamed as the creature's claws dug into his armor, attempting to tear through the metal. The rest of the cadets froze, unsure of what to do. Some began to back away. Others stood frozen in place, paralyzed by fear. Their natural instincts, trained to fight in wars, to engage in space battles, had failed them in the face of this primal terror. But the humans, they didn't hesitate. Private Hayes and Corporal Marcus Steele, who had been moving quietly ahead, immediately turned around. Marcus unholstered his weapon, but Sarah was already charging toward the creature with a calm that sent a chill through the alien cadets watching. She had no weapon in hand, just her sharp instincts and raw survival skills. She had faced worse on Earth. The Death World was never kind to its inhabitants, but it had made them strong. With a precision that was almost surgical, Sarah lunged at the creature, using its own momentum against it. She ducked under its claws and drove a small but powerful knife into its side, twisting as she pulled it out. The creature let out a screech of pain, rearing back for a second attack, but before it could strike, Marcus Steele came in from the side with a sharp, well-aimed shot, hitting the creature squarely in the head. The beast collapsed with a sickening thud. The alien cadets stared in stunned silence. They had been paralyzed by fear, and yet the humans had acted instinctively, saving one of their own. They didn't wait for orders. They didn't need any. They had survived because they understood something the others didn't. Sometimes, the only way out was through. The alien cadet who had been attacked, now freed from the creature's grasp, stood up shakily. His suit was torn, and he was covered in grime, but he was alive. He looked at the humans with wide, uncomprehending eyes. "How did you?" he stammered. "Simple," Sarah said, wiping the blood from her knife. "Survival." The tension among the alien cadets was palpable. Their survival instincts, honed in artificial environments, were no match for the raw brutality of nature. This was real. This was Earth. And the humans were starting to show them just how dangerous it could be when a Deathworlder decided to fight back. But that was only the beginning. As they continued to move deeper into the jungle, strange noises filled the air, and the very ground seemed to shift beneath their feet. This was no ordinary test. The Academy had designed this environment to be unpredictable, but the humans were already showing their strength. With every challenge they faced, their resolve grew stronger, while the alien cadets began to second-guess their confidence. And the jungle was far from the only threat. The Academy's instructors were watching closely, studying every move the humans made. They had underestimated the Deathworlders, but they had no idea what they were about to awaken. The humans were about to turn the tables in a way no one could have predicted. As night fell, the shadows seemed to stretch longer, and the creatures of the jungle began to emerge. This was the true test of survival, and it was only just beginning. Unseen dangers. The night came quickly, as it often did in alien jungles, but it wasn't the darkness that unnerved the cadets. It was the silence. Once the sun dipped below the horizon, the jungle had become eerily still, almost too still. The air that had once been thick with the buzz of alien insects was now unnervingly quiet. Even the breath of the wind was absent. The remaining cadets, now all huddled together, kept their eyes peeled. They couldn't shake the feeling that something was out there, something that was watching them, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. A strange sense of dread crept up their spines as they looked toward the horizon, where only the faintest traces of moonlight illuminated the silhouettes of monstrous trees. Captain Aidan Drake, the calm, focused leader of the human cadets, spoke first, his voice low but steady. "Set up a perimeter. Stay close. We don't know what's out there, but we know it's not friendly." His orders were clear. The humans, so accustomed to adversity, immediately began to make their preparations. While the alien cadets hesitated, unsure of what to do, the humans acted as though it was another day in the field. They began securing their equipment, setting up makeshift shelters, and organizing themselves into defensive positions. Every cadet knew this wasn't just a test anymore, it was survival. And this was something humans excelled at. Private Sarah Hayes moved quickly and efficiently, helping her fellow humans while keeping an eye on the alien cadets, who were still fumbling to set up their gear. They had never been this far from their homeworlds, and they had never faced anything like this jungle. Even with their advanced technology, they seemed hesitant, waiting for the right command. Sarah glanced at her fellow human cadets. "Remembered," she said, her voice a calm whisper, "nature doesn't care how advanced you are. It doesn't care how much technology you have. It just wants to survive." Her words resonated deeply with the alien cadets, who had always relied on technology to solve their problems. They were, in that moment, faced with a harsh reality, something that was beginning to feel all too real. The silence stretched on. Hours passed, but nothing came. Still, there was an undeniable sense of dread. Aiden walked around the perimeter, checking each cadet's position and ensuring they were ready for whatever was to come. Then, without warning, the first attack came. It wasn't a monstrous creature. It wasn't an army of predators. It was far worse than that. The jungle itself seemed to turn against them. With a loud creaking crack, a tree exploded from within. A massive vine, thick and covered in sharp barbed tendrils, shot out from the tree's base and snaked toward them like an enormous deadly serpent. The vine lashed out, whipping through the air with terrifying speed. Its sharp thorns were designed to tear through armor, and it didn't stop until it snagged one of the alien cadets, wrapping around his waist and lifting him off the ground. The alien cadet screamed, the tendrils tightening around him. His armor screeched as it was pierced, and blood splattered across the jungle floor. "Get him out of there," shouted Aiden. But the human cadets didn't hesitate. Private Marcus Steele was the first to act. Without even thinking, he sprinted toward the thrashing cadet, his hand reaching for his combat knife. The alien cadets froze, unsure of what to do, but the humans knew. Hesitation was death. Marcus reached the vine, and with one swift movement, he drove his blade into it. The vine recoiled, releasing the cadet, who fell to the ground in a heap. Marcus didn't stop there. He slashed at the vine again and again, until it finally shriveled and died, its once deadly grip loosening. The alien cadet, gasping for breath, was saved. But at what cost? The entire jungle was alive, and it seemed like it had just decided to fight back. "What? What just happened?" gasped the alien cadet, his voice trembling. "It's not just the creatures you need to worry about here," Sarah said calmly, wiping blood from her blade. "Everything's a threat. The trees, the plants, even the air could kill you if you're not careful." The jungle was alive in ways no one had anticipated. Its plants were carnivorous, its creatures unpredictable. The tension among the alien cadets was growing. They had never faced such a threat. They were used to relying on their advanced technology, their superior firepower, but the jungle didn't care about that. The jungle only cared about who could survive. And the humans, who had been raised on a death world, had learned the hard way how to survive when everything was against them. They had been forced to adapt, to become stronger, faster, and more resourceful. And now, in the midst of this nightmare, their experience was paying off. Every time the aliens hesitated, the humans moved. Every time the others second-guessed themselves, the humans acted without fear, without hesitation. As the cadets gathered around their fallen comrade, still shaken by the attack, Aiden spoke up again, his voice steady. "This isn't a game anymore. We're in the jungle now, and the only thing that matters is survival. Don't let your guard down." But in that moment, the humans knew something the aliens didn't. They were ready for whatever came next. The real test was just beginning. The jungle's wrath. The night deepened, but the human cadets weren't resting. They couldn't afford to. After the terrifying encounter with the vine, the jungle had become a living, breathing threat that hung over them. There were no safe zones, no places to hide. They were fully exposed in the heart of an alien wilderness, and the air felt thick with danger. As the stars twinkled overhead, barely visible through the thick canopy, the humans set to work fortifying their position. Every move was calculated. Every step was measured. They worked together seamlessly, as if this was nothing more than another day in their training. The alien cadets, on the other hand, were still reeling from the vine attack. They were not accustomed to such brutality from nature. The vines had been only the beginning. Aiden Drake, their captain, surveyed their surroundings, constantly alert. There was something about this place, something that didn't feel right. The jungle seemed to be watching them, its every rustle, its every shift in the wind, sending ripples of unease through their ranks. "Stay sharp," Aiden muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. "It's only going to get worse." As the hours passed, the sounds of the jungle returned, but now there was a new undertone, a low, guttural growl that seemed to be coming from the depths of the forest. Something was hunting them. Aiden knew that this was no longer about the simulated mission. It was about survival. Private Sarah Hayes, one of the most experienced human cadets, was crouched near the edge of their camp, scanning the dense trees with sharp eyes. Her hand was wrapped tightly around her weapon. The alien cadets huddled together behind her, unsure of what to do. They had never faced a situation like this before. "Move into position," she ordered, her voice calm but urgent. The humans immediately sprang into action, setting traps and fortifying their defenses. Sarah turned to look at the group of alien cadets who were still unsure of their place in the mission. They had been taught how to use their weapons, but none of them had been trained in survival tactics the way humans had. They had never had to fight for survival in an environment where everything seemed out to get them. "It's not about the weapons," Sarah said, her eyes scanning the trees. "It's about how you think, how you react. In here, the jungle doesn't care how advanced you are. It'll kill you if you're not prepared." The alien cadets exchanged uncertain glances, but Sarah didn't wait for their responses. The growling grew louder, echoing through the night. It was coming closer. "We need to act now," she commanded. Suddenly, out of the shadows, a massive shape emerged, its form partially obscured by the thick foliage. Its eyes gleamed red in the dark, and its growl was bone-chilling. It was a creature unlike anything the humans had ever encountered before. Tall, with jagged spikes along its back, and a mouth filled with teeth designed to tear through metal. It was as though the jungle itself had birthed this nightmare, a creature perfectly adapted to hunt in its dangerous depths. The alien cadets froze, staring at the beast in shock. But the humans? They didn't hesitate. They knew exactly what to do. Aiden, Sarah, and Marcus Steele moved into action. Without a word, they dropped into combat stances, ready to face the creature head-on. The alien cadets watched in disbelief as the human cadets showed no fear. To them, this was just another challenge. "Fire when I say," Aiden shouted. But the alien cadets, still shaken by the shock of their earlier encounter, hesitated for a moment. That was all the creature needed. It lunged toward them, its claws reaching out to strike. Without warning, Marcus Steele, the quickest of the human cadets, darted toward the beast. His movements were fluid, trained. In one swift motion, he threw a grenade at the creature's feet, causing a blinding flash of light. The creature recoiled, temporarily disoriented by the blast. "Now," Aiden yelled. The humans opened fire, their weapons unleashing a storm of bullets that tore through the creature's hide. The beast howled in pain, its movement slowing, but it wasn't enough. It was still a deadly force, determined to strike. Sarah didn't wait for anyone's orders. She darted forward, drawing her knife as she moved, slipping between the alien cadets' positions with precision. She was fast, fearless, and deadly. She managed to get in close to the creature and threw herself at its side, plunging the knife into its exposed flesh. The alien cadets were still unsure of what to do, but they couldn't deny the human's efficiency. Slowly, they joined in, firing their weapons at the creature from a distance. Eventually, with a final, blood-curdling scream, the beast collapsed to the ground dead. Panting and covered in the creature's blood, the humans stood victorious. The alien cadets were still catching their breath, their eyes wide with disbelief. The battle was over, but the real lesson had just begun. "This," Sarah said, wiping her blade clean, "is how we survive." Aiden nodded. "The jungle won't stop coming. We need to stay ready." The alien cadets were still in awe of the humans' response, and though they had fought alongside them, they knew they still had much to learn. The Deathworlders had just proven that surviving in this place wasn't about strength alone. It was about knowing how to outthink your opponent, how to react when the world itself was against you. They were learning fast. But the jungle would have more lessons for them yet. The real challenge was far from over. Into the heart of the beast. The jungle stillness was suffocating, but it didn't last long. After their hard-fought battle against the creature, the human cadets, though exhausted, stood tall, their faces hard with resolve. They knew that this moment of victory, however satisfying, was only temporary. The jungle wasn't going to let them rest. They had learned that much already. Aiden Drake took a moment to assess their position. The beast's body lay on the ground, its twisted form a stark reminder of the savage environment they had been thrust into. The alien cadets, though still shaken, were slowly beginning to rally. But they were far from ready. They lacked the instincts, the hardened experience that humans carried with them. The human cadets had been on Deathworld, a place where survival meant everything. Earth's harsh environment had forged them into a different breed, one that relied on wit, strategy, and sometimes sheer willpower. None of this was new to them, but it was a world of danger beyond anything their alien counterparts had faced. Sarah Hayes crouched beside the fallen creature, her eyes scanning the ground as if searching for something. She pulled a small device from her belt, scanning the beast's remains. Her brow furrowed. "It's not natural," she murmured. Aiden approached her, crouching beside her to get a better look. "What do you mean?" "The creature. It's been altered," Sarah explained. "These spikes, the way its body is built, it wasn't born like this. Something's been tinkering with the wildlife here." "Great," Aiden muttered. "So we're not just fighting the jungle. We're fighting something else. Something worse." The alien cadets exchanged uneasy glances. The reality was sinking in. They were far from prepared for a battle of this magnitude. "We'll be ready," Aiden continued, straightening up. "We don't stop. We move out in 10 minutes. Gear up." As they began to pack their equipment and prepare for the next leg of their journey, Sarah's mind was still racing. Something about this planet felt wrong. It wasn't just a random wilderness. This wasn't just a test. They were being pushed into something more. She could feel it in the air. But what was it? As they moved deeper into the jungle, the trees grew denser, the air heavier. The hum of alien creatures surrounded them, and every rustle of the leaves felt like a warning. It was clear now that they weren't just surviving a jungle. They were in the heart of something far more dangerous. The alien cadets followed their human counterparts, trying to mimic their movements, trying to keep up with the speed and precision of the Deathworlders. But the tension in the air was thick, and none of them dared break the silence for fear of making the wrong move. Hours passed, and the further they ventured, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The jungle was no longer just a place. They were in its grasp, and it was alive with malice. The air was thick with moisture, and every step was a reminder that they were deep in a hostile environment. Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet shifted. It was a subtle tremor at first, but the ground continued to shake. The trees above them swayed, as if the jungle itself was warning them. "We need to get to higher ground," Aiden ordered, his voice sharp. Without hesitation, the cadets started moving, scrambling up the steep incline of a nearby hill. The alien cadets followed in a hurry, though they still stumbled as they climbed. They weren't used to this kind of terrain, too rugged, too unpredictable. Meanwhile, the humans climbed with ease, their every step a reminder of their experience. At the top of the hill, the group paused, catching their breath. Sarah looked around, scanning the area. What she saw made her stomach tighten. The ground below them was moving. "Everyone, get back," she shouted, her voice filled with urgency. Too late. From the shadows, massive roots burst through the earth, spiraling upward with terrifying speed. They were like living things, snaking tendrils of vegetation that twisted and turned, reaching for anything they could grab. "Hold your positions," Aiden barked. The humans raised their weapons, firing into the massive roots, but it wasn't enough. The creatures, if they could be called that, were everywhere, erupting from the ground, forming a wall of deadly vegetation. The alien cadets froze, their eyes wide with fear as the roots lashed out, striking at the humans with frightening precision. "We need to move," Marcus Steele yelled. But as they turned to flee, the ground beneath them crumbled. The earth shook violently, and before anyone could react, they were falling, tumbling into the dark abyss below. Sarah's heart raced as she plummeted, her mind barely registering what was happening. The others were falling with her, their shouts lost in the chaotic sound of the collapsing earth. The world spun out of control, and in the blink of an eye, they were no longer in the jungle. They landed with a heavy thud, the impact knocking the wind from their lungs. The world was dark, and for a moment, there was nothing but silence. Aiden was the first to recover, pushing himself to his feet with difficulty. "Everyone all right?" he asked, his voice hoarse. Sarah nodded, her head spinning. The others slowly got to their feet, shaken but alive. They were in some sort of cavern, the walls slick with moisture and the air thick with an ominous heavy scent. "Where are we?" one of the alien cadets asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," Aiden said grimly. "But we're about to find out." The jungle above them had just become a memory. Now, they were in something darker, something far more dangerous, and they were about to learn the true meaning of survival, the depths of despair. The group, now separated from the jungle above, stood in the eerie silence of the cavern. The walls, slick with moisture, reflected their dim lights, casting long shadows that made every movement feel like it was being washed. The air was thick with an unsettling, musty scent, and the temperature was much colder than they had expected. Aiden Drake led the group, his sharp eyes scanning their surroundings. The cadets, exhausted from the fall, were visibly shaken, but there was no time for rest. The danger they had already encountered was just the beginning, and the cavern promised no comfort. "Stay alert," Aiden ordered, his voice low but commanding. "We don't know what's down here, but we'll make it through together. Keep your weapons ready and stay in formation." As they moved deeper into the cavern, the sound of their footsteps echoed around them, amplifying the silence. The walls seemed to close in around them as the passage narrowed, forcing them to squeeze past sharp rock formations. Every corner turn brought more uncertainty. Sarah Hayes, her senses heightened, felt the air grow even colder as they moved. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them, just beyond the reach of their light. "We need to find a way out," Sarah murmured to Aiden, who was walking in the lead. Her voice was tinged with unease, but she kept her composure. They couldn't afford to panic now. "We will," Aiden replied, though his voice lacked the usual certainty. He, too, could feel the oppressive atmosphere closing in on them. They had faced impossible odds before, but this was different. This wasn't just about survival. It was about understanding what they were up against. The walls of the cavern seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy, and every now and then the ground trembled underfoot. At first, it was subtle, a soft rumble that could easily be dismissed. But as they continued, the tremors grew stronger, more pronounced. "What the hell is causing that?" one of the alien cadets, Jorak, whispered. Aiden held up a hand, signaling for silence. They stopped moving, straining their ears to listen. The rumbling grew louder, the walls vibrating with each passing moment. Then, just as quickly as it had started, the tremor stopped. Aiden's mind raced. The timing of the tremor suggested something far more deliberate than natural. This wasn't just the cave shifting. It was as if something deep within the ground had stirred. "We need to keep moving," Aiden said, his voice now filled with urgency. That could be a warning of something worse. The group resumed their march, now more cautious than before. As they moved through the twisting paths of the cavern, the temperature continued to drop, and their breath began to fog in the air. But it was not the cold that unsettled them. It was the increasing sense that they were not alone. Sarah suddenly stopped, her sharp gaze darting around the cavern. Her instincts screamed that something was off. Her heart raced as she scanned the shadows, trying to make sense of what she was feeling. "Did anyone else hear that?" she asked, her voice low. The others paused, listening intently. For a long moment, all they could hear was the distant dripping of water and the occasional groan of the cavern walls. But then, a faint whisper echoed through the cavern, a sound so soft that it could have been the wind, but it was unmistakable. The whispers were growing louder. "Do you hear it?" Marcus Steele asked, his face pale. It's talking to us." Aiden's eyes narrowed as he gripped his weapon tighter. The alien cadets looked to him for guidance, but even he was uncertain of what was happening. "I don't know what this is," Aiden muttered, "but we need to find out where it's coming from." They moved cautiously, following the sound. The whispers grew louder, more distinct. As they rounded a bend in the cavern, the source became clear. Before them, embedded in the rock, was a strange, glowing artifact. It pulsed with an eerie light, its surface covered in intricate symbols that seemed to shift as they watched. The whispers were coming from it, swirling in the air like an ancient chant. This doesn't belong here," Sarah whispered, taking a cautious step forward. Aiden motioned for her to stop. "Wait," he said, his voice filled with both awe and caution. This could be more than just a relic. It might be a trap. But it was too late. As Sarah stepped closer to the artifact, a sharp electric pulse surged through the air. The artifact's glow intensified, blinding them all for a moment. Then, as the light dimmed, the cavern began to shake violently. The ground beneath their feet cracked open, sending shockwaves through the group. Rocks tumbled from above, and the sound of the shifting earth was deafening. "Get out," Aiden shouted. "Now." They turned to flee, but the path they had come from had already collapsed. The only way forward was through the cavern's deeper recesses, where the artifact had drawn them. Panic set in as they sprinted down the newly revealed passage. Behind them, the ground continued to quake, and they could feel the presence of something far larger than they had anticipated, something ancient and very, very angry. "We need to find a way out," Marcus cried, his voice rising in fear. But Aiden remained focused. They had no choice but to face what lay ahead. They had no idea what was coming, but one thing was certain. The survival of the Deathworlders was about to be tested like never before. And the echoes of the whispers were still in their ears, warning them that the real fight was just beginning. The final test. The cavern was alive with a sense of impending doom. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and the walls seemed to pulse with an energy that grew stronger with every step they took. The air was thick with the stench of fear and something ancient, something primal that they had never felt before. Aiden led the way, his heart pounding in his chest. The others followed closely, fear etched on their faces, but determination in their eyes. The sound of their hurried footsteps echoed in the narrow passageways as they plunged deeper into the labyrinth beneath the planet's surface. They had no idea what lay ahead. The artifact had triggered something, and now the cavern itself seemed to be alive, shifting, and changing. It was as if the very rock they walked on was a living entity, reacting to their presence. "Do you feel that?" Sarah asked, her voice tight with anxiety. "The walls, they're moving." "I feel it too," Aiden said, his voice steady but filled with tension. "Stay close. Whatever happens, we face it together." But the deeper they went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The whispers were louder now, swirling around them like an invisible storm. The air was thick with dread, and the temperature had dropped to freezing levels. The faint glow from the artifact that had once illuminated their path was now gone, replaced by an eerie darkness that seemed to choke the light from their torches. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shifted violently, sending everyone stumbling. Rocks tumbled from above, crashing to the floor with deafening force. A massive crack appeared in the wall to their right, and from within it, a low, guttural growl echoed, sending a wave of terror through the group. "We need to move now," Aiden ordered, his voice cutting through the fear like a knife. He didn't have to say it twice. The cadets sprang into action, running down the path that seemed to open before them, their boots thudding against the cold stone as the rumbling behind them grew louder. They ran as fast as they could, but the path was narrow and treacherous, with jagged rocks jutting from the walls and the ground uneven. The air was thick with dust, and the sound of the growls grew louder, closer. Aiden could hear the others panting behind him, their breaths quick and shallow as they fought to keep up. But he couldn't let his focus slip. Not now. Not when they were this close to whatever was hunting them. Suddenly, the ground in front of them caved in, revealing a massive chasm. There was no way to go forward, and they were trapped. "Move back," Aiden shouted, pulling the group into a tight cluster. "We need to find another way." The group backtracked quickly, but the growls had grown into snarls, and the sound of heavy footsteps reverberated off the walls. Something was coming, something big. Then, without warning, the darkness ahead parted, revealing a vast chamber. A huge, glowing creature stood in the center, its body covered in scales that shimmered in the dim light. Its eyes glowed with an unnatural red, and its mouth opened wide, revealing rows of sharp teeth. Aiden's heart skipped a beat as he saw the creature. It was massive, far bigger than anything they had encountered so far. The whispers had led them straight into the heart of the danger, and now they had no choice but to face it. "Get ready," Aiden shouted, drawing his weapon and taking a defensive stance. The creature let out a deafening roar, shaking the very ground beneath them. It lunged toward them with terrifying speed, its claws slashing through the air like deadly blades. The cadets fired at it, but the creature seemed to absorb the impact, its scales deflecting their weapons like they were nothing. It was invulnerable. But there was something in the creature's movements that suggested it was more than just a mindless beast. It was intelligent. It was testing them. Aiden's mind raced. They couldn't defeat this thing with brute force. They needed to outsmart it. He quickly glanced at Sarah and Marcus, who were both trying to hold their ground. They understood the unspoken message. They needed to find a weakness. As the creature advanced, Aiden spotted something, a faint glimmer along the back of its neck, a vulnerable spot, but it was moving too fast, and he couldn't get a clear shot. "Sarah, the neck," Aiden yelled. "Aim for the back of its head." Without hesitation, Sarah adjusted her weapon and fired. The shot struck the glimmering spot, and the creature let out a deafening scream. It staggered back, its claws scraping the stone as it tried to regain its balance. That was their opening. "Now, Marcus," Aiden shouted. Marcus aimed his weapon at the creature's exposed side, unleashing a series of rapid shots. The creature shrieked in agony as the bullets penetrated its scales, hitting its vulnerable organs beneath. With a final, desperate roar, the creature collapsed, its massive body hitting the ground with a deafening thud. The chamber fell silent once more, save for the heavy breathing of the cadets. "We did it," Sarah whispered, her voice filled with disbelief. "We actually did it." Aiden nodded, but his face was grim. "We survived," he said, "but we've only just begun to understand what this planet holds. There's more out there. We need to stay alert." As the group gathered their breath and prepared to leave the chamber, Aiden couldn't shake the feeling that the real test was still ahead of them. Whatever else this world had in store, the Deathworlders were ready. They had survived their first test, but the planet had more challenges waiting for them, and they would face them together.